Okay. We don't have very much on the official agenda. We have the collaborator proposal from Windstream to discuss, but I don't have anything else urgent that needs to be decided. We can, of course, have discussions on a variety of topics if people want to. Anyone else have any official agenda items? All right, not hearing any. Let's quickly take a look at Windstream. So this, they have been pretty active. Brian Luby has been active on Slack and building stuff. I think, Ali, you've probably talked to these guys too, haven't you?
Which guys?
Windstream?
Yeah, I've spoken to them.
Yeah, I talked to them also at the Cork Summit.
So, but can I ask? I read through their proposal. It sounds like they are suggesting to automate testing of new equipment, and they basically only talk about server equipment. Now, my question is, what needs to be tested? Is it just a matter of having a set of minimum requirements for a server and we're done?
Yeah, so I don't know. So we can certainly go back to them with this proposal. I know at sort of at the CTO level, they're really anxious to be involved, and these guys build pods, for lack of a better word, for a variety of customers. So it seems that they are heart is in the right place, if you so to speak. But I don't know about the specifics of this proposal. I hadn't talked to about this specifically as anyone. Maybe none of us have. So I can easily go back to them and ask for more information. So we want to, well, no, so.
Do you want me to write it down on the mailing list, my question in a bit more detail? So
Yeah, please do.
Okay, I'll do that. Maybe I'm just misreading, I don't know, but it seems very, not very challenging. But I could be wrong.
Well, so the last paragraph of resources, they're talking about their lab setup. Yeah, so if they can contribute to certification of alternative configurations, but they're relatively complete configurations and not just switches, that could be helpful. So they focus on their R630s.
In the text, they really focus on server hardware, and I really wonder what's the challenge. I mean,
yeah,
it's like when you buy macOS or when you buy Windows, it says okay, you need a Xeon processor, 4 cores, and 2 gigs of memory or whatever, right? Is that it, or I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, so send your message, and then I will get back to them with a combination of that and just asking for more information. And I'll acknowledge that we'd like to get them involved because they're just in the process that Brian went through to come up to get a pod running or booted. He contributed back, so that was just as a generic commuting member, that was very helpful.
So my impression is that there might be some issues with what kind of NICs are being used in the servers. So there's been some questions posted on Slack about we don't have 40 gig NICs, we only have 10 gig NICs, and is this going to work? So yeah, I wouldn't think that things like memory and type of CPU you have would really make any difference, but maybe there's some gotchas when it comes to networking hardware on the servers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, we do tell people what the hardware is that we support for the hardware pod. So obviously, if they don't buy hardware that is supported by the install process, then it doesn't work. No?
Well, so there's this key phrase in there in the proposal, which is the long-term objective is to create a tool that uses the methodology described above that can interact with the install process in order to crowdsource hardware certification.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Um,
neither do I.
but anyway, I mean, the isn't the idea of these collaborative? Didn't we decide that these collaborative proposals were going to go through? Like they do some sort of presentation if we thought that they were worth it.
I interpreted it slightly differently, which is if we had plenty of information about them, which has been the case for some of them, we didn't have to do that. If we thought there was promise but just wanted to hear more, we could give people an opportunity to do that. So we could certainly try to do that, say for next week with them.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
And then
Yeah, I'm okay with them joining because they've been doing a lot of stuff.
that's kind of the way I looked at it. But it would be good to see what it is officially they have planned.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get back to them with that feedback.
Okay.
Other topics people want to talk about.
So I thought maybe Ali had a topic in that he sent out a note about some permissions on the Garrett repo for Scott and I. And to be honest, I don't remember how those permissions came to get there. I sent that note to Scott because he's not on the list and I haven't heard back from him. Um, but I guess the larger issue that Ali raised was, should people maybe on the core team not have any kind of special permissions on Garrett and other places just to make sure that we have a level playing field and we don't end up looking bad in some way.
Well, it's not really that. It's. I mean, no one should really have push uh, permission or push access because that's
So
just bad.
we put that in place early on, just because things were moving so rapidly and we were trying to get up to speed. But I think we probably have hit a steady state that we could back out of that if that.
Those permissions were added on July 20th. They weren't added in June or anything. They were added in July 20th, which is very recently, if you ask me.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have any recollection of asking for those permissions or using them, but I looked through my email and I didn't see anything. But um,
Well, fine.
yeah, so
Let's
I'm not using them as far as I'm concerned. Get rid of them. But I did ask Scott about it to see if he knew anything.
Okay. Um,
I think
and, and I mean, along the same lines, because it's it seems to me that like things are changing quickly, and APIs are changing quickly, um, which is making deployment for other people that depend on certain API calls to be where they were, and now that they've changed, they're not there anymore. Um, how do we address changes that affect other people?
well. So let me address what I know is changing. Um, there is a lot of activity on the completing, fleshing out the configuration interfaces. I don't know that I would call those changing old interfaces as much as adding, fleshing out in additional ones. So it's, I would think it's 99% new. Um, on the other hand, it's a slightly different situation. we don't. It's not like we have an install base out there. We've got a lot of developers, and for a variety of reasons, they need to stay fresh with the latest commits, just because bugs are being fixed and so on. I don't know that we are yet at a stage where if there are API changes, it is having the kind of effect that it would if we had an install base. I'm not claiming that we ought to turn a complete blind eye to that. I just don't know that I would consider it a problem yet.
Well, it is a problem once you've announced the software. So regardless of how many people have installed it, and regardless of how many people are actually using it, the moment that your software is publicly accessible, then you have to follow some rules. You can't just change stuff because you feel like it.
I think, to be honest, I think we're still in a release state, a pre-release state, right? We haven't actually released, and so there is some churn now. If the fact that we've announced a release does, I think, imply some stability in the code, which to be in the code base, which quite frankly just isn't there yet. And I see that as problematic. I mean, I know, I'm being hit up on Slack a lot, both in the public channels and private channels, about deployment issues, right? And even some of this code I'm doing is like, well, that's changed, right? Because we've hit that bug as more and more people deploy things. Oh, you're not using 40 gig interfaces, using 10 gig interfaces. So there's much more churn in the code right now than I'm comfortable with even in a pre-release stage. I don't know how to resolve that. I do think we need to get to a point where we have a more conservative, process-bound check-in cycle. The question is, do we do that now, or are we just in such a pre-release state right now that we're still kind of in the everybody has to push? But then we've got the conflict with people outside this kind of close-knit family are starting to use this, and it's causing problems. I mean, it's eating time.
It is. Yeah, I mean, good summary of the situation, David. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay. So, but I mean, so what do we do then?
My biases would be that we not hamper ourselves with the highest standards, accept that there's churn, make sure the community understands it, make sure they also understand it is our intent to get to something much more stable. We're not comfortable that we're quite there yet.
I mean, I don't think we're not hampering ourselves with any standard at this point. So I mean, something's got to give, but
So what minimal standard could we put on ourselves that would help?
I mean, it's we need at least verifications of every at least a big enough test suite to verify that what we're doing isn't breaking previous deployments.
Well, that's different than an API changes, though.
No, it's not. It really is just API changes.
That wouldn't be how I would interpret it. I mean, I guess at some level, everything is an API change.
I do think we need a test suite that runs and verifies code pre-merge, right? Just do a sanity test on it. And I think that'd be good. But the conflict I have there and the problem I have there is right now to do a full-fledged verification, which would be a deployment of the system as well as a verification through some testing, the verification process now will take 3 hours, right? That's just the nature of the beast right now. From 0 to being able to do something, it's a minimal 3 hours. And that means every time I do a git review, before I can do a merge into my code, I have to wait 3 hours. I don't know how to deal with that, right? That is a very long verification cycle.
No, we don't. I mean, so I'm not saying that we need to build everything. It's just processes around how we change configurations, how we change APIs to make sure that either they communicate something that has been changed and it will break you, or um, uh, or um, I mean,
Well, so can a appropriate notice slash documentation help here? And I don't know if this is the right answer, but if there were hypothetically a place to post, maybe it's even a Slack channel, it's called interface or whatever, that um, anytime you do something that might affect someone else, that is just the place that you post that.
no, but for example, we cannot go around adding, for example, IP tables rules that break other people just to make a website accessible, right? Or an interface accessible. We can't do that, right? I mean, does that make sense to everybody?
And again, if we had some level of verification test, things like that would be caught, right?
Well, would they? No, they wouldn't, right? Because your verification build is not going to test if the website is accessible. It might, but it probably wouldn't.
If we were doing a full verification, it would catch some of that. Nothing's going to catch all of it, but it would catch at least some of it.
But I mean, there are ways to configure a web server such that you can share a web server. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I mean, to be fair, the verification builds will eventually come out. I don't know that we'll ever have 100% full verification build. I don't think we will because by the very nature of what we're building, uh, well, there'll always be new things that'll cause failures, and so it'll never be complete. Um, and that's fine. But we can mitigate that by kind of having a few more uh, rules and processes about how to update things.
Yeah. So what would be the common sense extra things we could be doing?
I mean, again, uh, check with people who you think might be affected by a change. Check with them whether that particular change is going to break them, or at the very least, if you think it's going to affect them, test it beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean,
And some of that is going on, right? Through the back channels. But
yeah, it shouldn't
even
be.
then, we miss things, right? Because everybody's busy doing things. So even in this explicit case with the IP tables, right? That was checked. And when it came to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Let's map to XOS. It didn't even come to my mind that, oh yeah, switch builds or boots would trigger because that was just not where my mind was at the time, right? And that's the whole point of automatic testing is that when my human mind fails, that picks it up.
Okay. Okay.
Do we have a problem of too much back channeling?
Well, that's one. There shouldn't be any back channeling for that matter. I mean, all our conversations should be in open forums, and I don't think Slack is the best one, frankly.
Why is that? I actually really like Slack.
It's too ephemeral.
Why?
Because conversations disappear. They're hard to keep track of. If I miss an hour's worth of intense slacking, then it's quasi impossible for me to catch up.
Yeah, I find the same thing true with the email channels. By the way, I get so much email. It's like, okay, just mark it as read because I just can't filter through it. But again,
Well,
I think there's
ultimately, I mean, I can't tell you guys what tools to use and what things you prefer, but I'm just saying, um, I prefer things on public forums like like mailing lists because I just think it's easier, and emails seem to force people to have more context in every single email rather than a little chat
Yep.
where you just send quick messages.
This is where I really liked Google Wave because you could kind of have some of that context conversations. That's neither here nor there. I mean, if we need to move these things to the dev list, if that's kind of where the community feels more comfortable, that's fine. Um, I think there's there is some back channel conversation I find it useful, and the reason I find it useful is because what I see in my mind anyway is there's some coordination between Andy Scott, Zach, uh, myself, and we kind of come to this consensus amongst ourselves, and then at some point we have to do surface that for the rest of the community, and perhaps we're not doing that second part well enough. But sometimes we have these internal sync conversations out in the community, it may confuse people because I think there's sections of the community who are really just focused on, look, I want to deploy, these little. You start throwing things about IP tables there. I'm going to use that same example out on the community board. I just can't deal with it, right? There's different user classes, if you will,
Yeah,
and I don't know how to work around that.
I understand that. Maybe the answer is different. Maybe the answer is to look at what is causing conflicts and on, I guess it's on the head node. What is causing conflict? Because we seem to be walking on top of each other on the head node too frequently. So perhaps the idea would be to sit down, kind of list out all the things that are in conflict or can potentially be in conflict, and figure out the better way to configure this and come up with a solution for it. To avoid it going forward.
Well, so Ali, you're now kind of taking this conversation in a different direction, which is I understand there's lots of churn. I didn't understand what you just said, that there's a lot of conflict and we're stepping on each other. I don't get that sense, but maybe I'm not seeing it at the same level you are. I mean, yeah, some stuff happens every now and then, and that hasn't
Well,
seemed to be the problem from what I've seen.
well, I mean, put it that way. I've deployed the pod, I don't know, 10 times now, and I'd say maybe 9 out of those 10 times, if the deployment failed for a different reason. That wasn't the one I fixed in the previous build. So something's wrong, right?
So a concrete suggestion. Slack is very rapid fire, low level. Whether it's back channel or not, if we were to record checkpoints of decisions and so on a little better on the mailing list as our quasi archived version of what's transpired, that could be helpful. But I don't know if there's a good way out of this except for getting to something more stable.
Okay, but how do we get to something more stable?
Arguably we keep doing what we're doing as best we can.
Okay, that's okay. But I mean, in my opinion, we won't get there, but that's fine.
I think for stability purposes, we need on a nightly basis, or because I think you can't do it at a check-in basis, something building from 0 up.
Yeah, that's on me to deliver the sprint. So I'm going to do that.
Because until we get the kind of that consistent build process, I mean, trust me, like I feel your pain about I've deployed this 10 times and it works 20% of the time. I've deployed this hundreds of times, right? And it's a long cycle and it's a painful cycle. And then I've worked with different people in the chat list and through email, and I'm feeling their pain through these cycles. And my real concern is because this is an open source project, people tend to say, hey, I'm going to try this out, and the minute I feel lots and lots of pain, you lose a subset of these people in the community because they're like, this is nowhere near ready. I'll come back in a year.
Well, you're absolutely right, David. That is a huge risk, but it's nearly every one of those cases. They've stepped outside of the core, the blessed configuration. Not that they shouldn't. Of course, they're going to, but um, there's a management of expectations. Everyone wants a piece of this now, and they've got their hardware. And I mean, just the example of fighting, bringing up pods behind corporate firewalls. 90% of our people picking this up are fighting that problem.
No, and I dealt with over the weekend. There was a DNS issue because they had a certain DNS rules. They had to use their corporate DNS server and
Exactly.
had to have DNSSEC, right? It is a pain, but I mean, these are at one level. It's really great to have all these extra cases because, well, we didn't think of that. Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
And for some of those users, they'll hit the pain and they want to contribute, they want to help, and they do that. But I'm just worried about what people have seen the pain or hit the pain and said, "I'm done."
No, but I mean, this example right now of being behind a corporate firewall. Right now, we're saying that if you want to install Cord, you need an internet connection. If you don't have it, then it won't work. Sorry. Right?
Well, then right. So where's your priority? You just turned away a set of users, and because our users
I'm not turning away users. There's a difference between telling users what will and will not work, which is acceptable, right? And you tell them that this won't work. It just won't work, and it won't work right now, right? And you make them aware. Whereas if we tell them, yeah, it'll work, and then they try it and it doesn't, that's worse.
But
Right?
we're not telling them it'll work. They post their problem. Sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what their problem was. That perhaps it was because we screwed up on what we said we were going to deliver on.
But what I'm saying is, if you make it very clear in the requirements of install that you need a internet connection from your pod, um, then
All right, so that's a easy explanation on some wiki somewhere or MD file.
The problem is they're going to push back and say, "I have an internet connection. It's through a proxy."
Right.
but then configure your thing correctly. I mean, like, there's no magic here, right? Like if you're going to have a different setup, then it's on you. It's not on us. I mean, we're not supposed to debug everybody's setups. It's not our role.
I disagree because we are an embryonic open source project. If we do not help these people, we will lose them.
I'm not saying we don't help them. I'm just saying it's not a priority.
At some level, I think it is, right? Because we've got to get these people up and running to a point where when they go talk to their bosses who write the checks, they go, "Yeah, I've had some issues, but they've been helpful, and I've been able to work through them." Versus they talk to their boss and go, "I've been banging my head for a week. We got to find something else."
Okay, well.
Yeah, I'm with David. And this is a very high level call, but I don't think we're responding to these issues. I mean, every now and then you will get someone who's just completely lost in the weeds, and then you try to help them recognize they're in the weeds. But most of these people are trying, and I do consider it a priority. There's a risk that we put way too much time here and we don't keep pushing stuff along, but we now have a more robust build than we used to.
Okay.
I mean, it would be nice if there was someone who could kind of take this troubleshooting thing and run with it such that it didn't take the time of developers, for lack of a better term. That it's just there's no one to do that now.
Yeah, I agree completely on that one.
I mean, this thing needs to become so much more stable, in my opinion. It is nowhere. I mean, we announced a release 3 weeks ago now, whenever that summit was, and it is, in my opinion, nowhere near ready. There's just even with the blessed kind of hardware deployment, it feels like it's too sensitive. I don't know what the right word is.
But
Uh,
what part of it is not working?
I just don't have I don't have a high confidence that I could take a blessed pod configuration, hardware configuration, and go through this and at the end of it have a up and running cord. Even if you take the OLT out of the equation, I don't have a high level of confidence that anybody could do that. That you could take that off the shelf and run it without coming to the chat or the email for help.
Sure, but what part of this is not working? Like what is
So,
failing?
so right now, well, first of all, you will get inconsistencies. There's sometimes things just time out and don't work the way they was. So um, I still have not, in the configuration I'm doing, which you can quote unquote say is not a completely blessed configuration because I'm natting through the head node, got the whole BSG up and running. Right? And I haven't spent a tremendous amount of time on that because, well, I've been trying to battle some of the UI issues with the Apache proxy, and quite frankly, it's a pain in the neck. I can't get the Apache proxy to do what I want. Right? But until someone other than, I'll call it the core 5 or 6 people that have been working on this, can take that markdown document in a hardware configuration and run through it, and at the end of that have a VSG that they can SSH into and ping the world, and do that consistently, which means I can take 5 random people and have them do it from own labs. I'm not at a place where I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I agree.
So who do we have at Owen Lab that can do that?
I mean, we have the people. The problem is that it won't work. It's not that's not the problem. Is that like we have the people, and I mean, even if we don't have the people, even the 5 people who've been deploying the pod, they can do it in a very naive way, right? You just run all the commands back to back, and if they don't work, then it's wrong, right? Um,
Well,
but
yes, so I agree with you, but we have to establish the standard, as you would put it, where there is an attempt to do a nightly build, and then you are held accountable for having caused it to fail. It's
well,
a
yeah,
chicken and egg thing here. We have to try, I guess, to establish the shaming that you were the one that caused it to fail, and you didn't tell anyone, or you changed an API, or whatever it is you did.
well, yeah. But I mean, yeah. So I'm going to try to get this auto build working, but again, like it's gonna. I need see the problem is not getting the auto build working, right? The problem is not getting like doing automatic build of code is not hard. What's hard is is getting the hardware. We don't have hardware. We don't have equipment. You see what I'm saying?
I
We only have one pod, and,
So
and
I just got my pod back from the Cable Lab show. I'm trying to get it up and working today. And once I get up and working today, I will kind of do that naive run through on that pod. And I'm fairly confident that I will get through the platform deploy base deploy base deploy platform steps. I figure I got like an 80% chance of that all working. Then the problem is getting the fabric up and working, and more importantly, making sure that the VSG gets up and working. Right?
well,
That I have less confidence in.
so the manual steps are I would argue are beyond scope. The manual steps that come behind are beyond scope for the initial release. So that's okay. That's fine. What I'm interested is by the end of platform install, do I have everything? Do I have everything in place and operational? That's what I'm interested in.
So can I
I'm
ask
still,
another,
Go
sort of take this in a slightly different way? A lot of people are bringing up the single node version. I understand there's a lot of complexity in the full pod. Andy and Matteo can maybe speak to, there are nightly tests done, and except for the corporate proxy issue, my sense is that people are getting through it and it's stayed relatively stable for them. Is that a overly rose-colored summary?
I've had a couple people see some networking issues, maybe not proxy, but some timing issues where things
Timing out, yeah.
didn't get timing out, didn't get downloaded, or those type of things. And we've slowly been weeding some of those out. I've had a couple people today run into an issue. There's a known bug in mass where I've seen it surface if you redeploy the head node over a head node without starting from scratch. Now, I submitted a change over the weekend or whenever that was that eliminates some of that, but that was, again, rapidly changing at the edge. So if they're a couple commits behind, they don't see that. I've walked two different people through that today. It didn't surface at all until today, and all of a sudden people hit it. The UI issue, the surfacing UI issue around the switch boot images I saw, I think, over the weekend, and that we really need to resolve the UI forwarding issue. Whether that is just put everything back the way it was, and yeah, it's a pain to get the XOS UI, or heaven help me, I figure out how to work with Apache proxy, which seems to be my curse right now. But that needs to be addressed. I mean, I think that the goal is reasonable, which you go to head node port 80 and it defaults to the XOS UI. I think it's a reasonable goal, but it's a pain.
Yep. Andy?
Right, so the single node test, or build and test, is running on Jenkins. That's running off of master. We don't currently have something that's doing a nightly build of the release candidate. So that is kind of a hole. It would be good maybe if we did also have the Cord 1.0 branch getting built and tested nightly. I think the Cord 1.0 branch of the single node pod is working reasonably well and is pretty stable. We have been using that the most for our own testing and development. So my expectation would be that people who are running just like in an environment similar to what we're using on Cloud Lab for testing should be able to bring this up without too many problems.
I'm actually not seeing a lot of people using Cloud Lab. I'm seeing, well, I don't know a lot. I know about 2 or 3 people that are trying to bring it up on physical hardware in a multi-node pod situation. And I think that's probably the least tested scenario, and it's the most complex scenario that we've got right now. And I see people running into that.
Yeah, agreed that that's the most complex and least tested.
Well, lots of teeth gnashing, which I suppose is okay. I don't think there are any easy answers here. I guess having the hardware to do the nightly build so that we at least have a target to shoot for, even if we fail to hit it right off the bat, is helpful.
Yeah, if we could also, going back to the single node pod, if we could also get another server that we could use for testing the release candidate just for the single node build, that would be useful. Maybe there's some way that we can, maybe we should change our current Jenkins test to be running off of the Cord 1.0 branch instead of master.
Can you serialize the tests, i.e., hey, build master, get a yes, no on that, then build 1.0, get a yes, no on that? I mean, if you can't get an extra node, just serialize them.
Yeah, maybe there's something that we can work out there. It's kind of nice if the test fails. It's kind of nice to have the environment around the next morning when you show up so that you can inspect it.
No, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get track on another server. That should be possible. Mateo is on the call here, and I'm pretty sure is the one that set that up originally.
We can probably have a serialized build of both master and cord.
Well, except that you do lose the ability to wade through what was left behind. So let's work on that one way or the other. Go talk to Luca and see. There's got to be more servers, another server that we could throw at this.
I'll try to ask.
Any other concrete suggestions?
No, not for me.
Anyone else? The high level point of trying to also, I don't know, archive or to raise the decisions or the changes to a level that everyone can see them. And I think doing that in email kind of makes sense, just given the nature of what happens on Slack, which is very, very productive, but as a checkpoint so everyone knows what may affect them. Any other discussion? All right, let's adjourn, and I will follow up with Windstream and see if we can get some more information out of them. All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Mateo, are you still on this call?